Hello friends, there was a disconnection and therefore the earlier session which we were continuing on deduction under section 16 was disconnected, and now we are logging in again through this new heading deduction under section 16 for salary part 10, and we will continue our earlier session, that is salary part 9, to complete this concept of deduction under section 16. So just a hint of what we said, that there will be three kind of deductions from the gross salary, that is section 16(1)(a), that is standard deduction, which will be fixed amount of rupees 50,000 irrespective of any other factor. This is just a fixed amount that has been allowed to cover for all kind of expenditure that an employee incurs to create his or to earn his salary. The second deduction, that is section 16 subsection 2, is for entertainment allowance, which is a specialized deduction only for central and state government employees. So I said that it is a special deduction because it is applicable only for central and state government employees. Secondly, in addition to entertainment allowance, बाकी जितने भी allowances थे, they were all enjoying exemption if there is any. Means कुछ डिडक्शंस ऐसे थे, कुछ अलाउंसेस ऐसे थे जो फुल्ली टैक्सेबल थे, जिसलिए जितना भी अमाउंट मिला वो सारा का सारा फुल्ली टैक्सेबल हो गया. फॉर एग्जांपल मेडिकल अलाउंस. और इसके अलावा कुछ अलाउंसेस ऐसे हैं जिनमें एग्जम्पशन एप्लीकेबल है, या तो वो एग्जम्पशन एक फिक्स्ड अमाउंट है, फॉर एग्जांपल चिल्ड्रन एजुकेशन अलाउंस. ये कुछ अलाउंस की एग्जम्पशन डिपेंडेंट है हाउ मच ऑफ द अलाउंस रिसीव्ड हैज बीन इनकर्ड फॉर द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ ऑफिशियल ड्यूटीज. So whatever the scenario is, the allowance received will be deducted as per the exemption available, and only the balance allowance will be added to the gross salary. But in the case of entertainment allowance, the whole amount of entertainment allowance is added for the calculation of gross salary, and only the provided, the later on discussed part of the entertainment allowance will be eligible as deduction from the gross salary under section 16(2). And because this deduction is available only to central and state government employees, so it implies that entertainment allowance is fully taxable. This entertainment allowance is fully taxable for all other employees. तो सेंट्रल और स्टेट के अलावा बाकी जितने भी एम्प्लॉयज हैं उनके लिए जो एंटरटेनमेंट अलाउंस है वो फुल्ली टैक्सेबल. और जो बाकी बच गए, जो बताया मैंने आपको सेंट्रल एंड स्टेट वाले, उनके लिए जो डिडक्शन जो है उसके लिए 3 पैरामीटर्स बनाए, और उन तीनों पैरामीटर से कंपेयर करके जो उन तीनों में लीस्ट होगा दैट विल बी डिडक्शन. डिडक्शन इज टू द एक्सटेंट, द डिडक्शन इज टू द extent of least of the following, to the extent of the least of the following. और ये following में 3 पैरामीटर्स हैं. पहला पैरामीटर जो है वो as always actual entertainment allowance received, as we have discussed in earlier cases also. तो जितना अलाउंस मिला वो फर्स्ट अमाउंट है. सेकेंड अमाउंट इज 20% of basic salary only. That is another important point here, that in earlier cases like in HRA, gratuity, pension, whatever we discussed, the salary was basic plus dearness allowance to the extent forming part of salary plus commission if received as a percentage of turnover. But here it is only the basic salary whose 20% is to be taken, and no other allowance or any other item is to be included for the calculation of salary here. And the third case is the maximum amount of deduction, which is 5,000. So in तीनों में से least, so it implies that the maximum deduction is rupees 5,000 per annum. तो एंटरटेनमेंट अलाउंस के बिहाफ पर जो मैक्सिमम डिडक्शन है वो सिर्फ 5,000 की है, और वो भी किसके लिए? सिर्फ सेंट्रल और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉयज के लिए. So we can say that this deduction is quite immaterial. But whatever it helps in saving the tax. So it is always good to have as much deduction as possible. ठीक है. In addition, now if we move to the third deduction, and that is known as the professional tax. Now, before we move on to the deduction part under section 16 subsection 3, we have to understand that professional tax is actually a kind of local, or we should say state government tax. So income tax is a central act, and in some states, because the tax on the income is paid to the central government and the local government believes कि जो हमारे यहाँ का बिजनेसमैन है वो हमें इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स पे कर रहा है, जीएसटी वगैरह, लेकिन जो हमारे यहाँ का सैलरीड एम्प्लॉय है दे आर नॉट पेइंग एनी टैक्स टू अस. तो सम स्टेट्स, for example, in earlier cases, this tax was applicable in Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu. So these states said that because the salaried employee here is not paying any tax on his salary to us, so they levied a small amount known as the professional tax, especially on the salaried employees. So what was happening? So first of all, need to remember that this is not a universal tax. It may be applicable in some states and may not be applicable in some states. But for academic purposes, you don't have to remember the state's name. If the question mentions that the professional tax has been paid, then it will be eligible for deduction. And if it is not the case, then it will not be available for deduction. So it implies that the professional tax is allowed on paid basis. But the important thing is that either obviously it is paid by the employee himself, but sometimes it happens in big companies which have universal, or we should say which have pan-India employee base. So it may happen that some of the employees are in the state where there is no professional tax, and some cases will be posted in states where professional tax is levied. So they will be complaining that we have a special expenditure on our part. So in some cases, the employer undertakes the liability to pay the professional tax on behalf of the employee if levied in that particular state. So it can happen that such professional tax is paid by the employer only. So the important point here is whether it is paid by the employee or whether it is paid by the employer. In both the cases, the employee can claim deduction under section 16(3). इसका मतलब एम्प्लॉय पे करे या एम्प्लॉयर पे करे, डिडक्शन है ही है. बट द इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट इज कि अगर इसको एम्प्लॉयर ने पे किया है देन इट बिकम्स अ मॉनिटरी ऑब्लिगेशन ऑफ एम्प्लॉय paid by the employer, paid or we should say reimbursed. It means employee ने पे कर दी और employer ने उसको वापस पे कर दिया. तो paid or reimbursed by the employer, and such monetary obligation are taxable perquisites for all employees. So what is happening here कि हम लोग ग्रॉस सैलरी में से जब प्रोफेशनल टैक्स की डिडक्शन देंगे अंडर सेक्शन 16 सबसेक्शन 3, तो अगर ये प्रोफेशनल टैक्स एम्प्लॉय ने पे किया तो ये स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड यहाँ डिडक्शन है, लेकिन अगर एम्प्लॉयर ने पे किया तो पहले वो ग्रॉस सैलरी में ऐड हो जाएगा और उसके बाद माइनस होगा. So please, 2 points to remember. Whether professional tax is paid by the employee or whether it is paid by the employer, it does not affect the deduction under section 16(3). It means that in both the cases, the professional tax will be deducted from the gross salary on, as discussed above, the paid basis. But if it is paid by the employee, then it is reducing your taxable salary. But if it is paid by the employer, then it is first added to your gross salary as a taxable perquisite and then deducted. So effectively, it will not have any impact on your gross salary taxability. So after this, we have already discussed कि हम इसमें से क्या मैनेज करेंगे. एंटरटेनमेंट अलाउंस, जिसका सेक्शन है अंडर सेक्शन 16 सबसेक्शन 2. और सबसे पहले क्या बोला हमने कि क्या मैनेज करेंगे हम, स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन अंडर सेक्शन 16(1). और ये माइनस करने के बाद जो हमारी फिगर बचेगी उसे बोला जाएगा टैक्सेबल सैलरी और द इनकम अंडर द हेड सैलरीज which will be added to your gross total income, that is the GTI, along with other heads if employee have other incomes also. So what is the point to be noted, that standard deduction will always be allowed to the extent of rupees 50,000 with no conditions as such applicable except that gross salary is more than 50,000. But when we come to the entertainment allowance, it will be allowed only for central government and state government employees. So it is applicable only for central and state government employees. And when we talk of professional tax, it is only applicable if it is paid. So there are conditions on allowance of deduction. There are conditions on allowing deduction of professional tax or entertainment allowance, but there is no condition for the standard deduction, and hence it is an absolute deduction. So on this note, we hope that we have understood all the broad topics of income under the head salaries, and there may be some topics which have not been covered on these free sessions as on available on the YouTube channel of College Dekho. So for that, we request you to join and subscribe to our channels so that there will be more interactive and personalized coaching experience available for you. On this note, this is Deepak Gupta signing off. Thank you very much. Goodbye.